Hey everybody, it's Frank. I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer. If we sound off in this episode compared to the first one and the ones after it, it's because we've had to record this one twice. Thanks Adobe for losing the project the first time, and also we might feel a bit exhausted because this is definitely the longest and most convoluted episode we've done so far. The entire plot, synopsis, discussion, recap, whatever you want to call it, is as long as the entirety of the Man of Steel episode, but this is just a sign of what the movie is like. So bear with us. If we can do it twice, you can do it once. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to the DCPU, where psychotic is just a three-syllable word for any thought too big for little minds. I'm Thomas, here with my co-host Frank, and today we'll be going over the second installment of the DCEU, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. We've got an exciting episode here today, because this one ends in a bit of a shit show. Let's get into it.
Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice was released on March 26, 2016. It was the only live-action DC film to be released in the 3 years since Man of Steel. Meanwhile, Marvel had released 5 more films in the same amount of time, really emphasizing how sluggish Warner Brothers' efforts to compete were, and how the pressure was on to play catch-up. Something we forgot to highlight in the last episode that's worth noting: Man of Steel's entire pre-production and principal photography was done before the Avengers came out, with shooting wrapping in February 2012. This confirms that Snyder, Goyer, and Nolan almost certainly did not envision it as the start of a cinematic universe.
As we briefly mentioned in our first episode, the idea of a Batman and Superman crossover film had been floated before. In 2002, Warner Brothers had hired the director of Das Boot, Wolfgang Peterson, to direct a version of the idea written by Akiva Goldsman. And I've actually read through the script a bit, and it seems like there was definitely some inspiration taken from it and maybe reincorporated into the script for Batman v Superman. Things like an older, bitterer Batman with the dead Robin, Lex manipulating the two heroes to fight each other, etc.
Johnny Depp was being considered for Batman, with Josh Hartnett or Christian Bale for Superman. So it's pretty interesting to see that Christian Bale almost played Superman in a movie.
And I cannot really see Johnny Depp being Batman.
I can't either. Doesn't really seem like the right kind of role for either of those people.
Maybe if Tim Burton was making it.
Maybe. The version audiences would eventually see, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, was revealed by Zack Snyder at San Diego Comic-Con in July 2013, just 1 month after Man of Steel's release. Moments before the reveal, Snyder directly cited Frank Miller's comic The Dark Knight Returns as his main inspiration for the project.
And I remember watching that reveal, where they had the guy who plays General Swanwick read that quote from The Dark Knight Returns, and then the whole crowd erupts and do applause, and they're like, yeah!
Yeah, it's a really cool reveal, honestly. He's got a great voice.
I feel like they don't, at least now, they don't actually get genuinely excited at stuff like that. Like, they do cheer, but I feel like that older, kind of early 2010s, reveals actually hit, and people were actually surprised by stuff. Now it just feels like they're just cheering just because they're there.
Yeah, it does seem like at this point it's gone on in one form or another for so long with DC and Marvel that it's just not as exciting anymore. You know, when they announce a new project or a slate of projects, there's some excitement, but it's kind of become old hat.
I think it also doesn't help that there's all the leakers and stuff who basically spoil all the announcements that could potentially come out before they can even officially announce it. Ruins the hype totally.
That's a good point, yeah. I mean, the internet is a different landscape these days than it was 15 years ago.
Oh god, don't say that. 15 years?
Well, I guess it's only been 12, but we're getting there.
Thank you. My heart is healed. So Nolan was actually involved in the casting of Affleck, and he was the first actor Snyder approached for the part. But it was also said that Ryan Gosling, Joe Manganiello, Richard Armitage, Max Martini, and Matthew Good were also considered for the role.
Something we forgot to mention in the last episode is that there were other people besides Henry Cavill considered for the role of Superman. Matthew Good, Joe Manganiello, Armie Hammer, Jamie Dornan, Colin O'Donoghue, and Tyler Hoechlin, who would later play the character in the Arrowverse. How was he in the Arrowverse? I never watched those shows.
I don't think I got that far enough to see.
Okay.
I heard Superman and Lois wasn't bad.
Yeah, I heard that was good.
A year later, Snyder would explain the significance of the film's title and the emphasis of having a simple V instead of the word versus to keep it from being a straight versus movie, even in the most subtle way.
Snyder would later go on to reveal alternate titles for the film that he and the writer had considered during development, which included Son of Sun and Night of Night, which was his idea, and, from the other writer, Justice League Foundations or Justice League Rising. I think this might be one of the rare instances where the studio executives made the right call in vetoing something from the creatives.
Son of Sun and Night of Night is so stupid.
Could you imagine people trying to go see the new Batman movie and being confused because when they get to the theater, there's no movie called Batman or Superman?
And then it's like the drastic difference between that being just really stupid and then Justice League Foundations or Justice League Rising being like the most generic comic book slop names.
Yeah, that's really lazy.
A V is usually used in references to court cases, which may be a reference to the clashing ideologies and perspectives between Batman and Superman in the film. It could have been Son of Sun v Night of Night, Dawn of Justice League Rising.
Son of Sun v Night of Night, Dawn of Justice League Rising.
So Man of Steel's writer, David S. Goyer, had written a draft of the script, but he was too busy with other DC projects to stick around through pre-production, so writer Chris Terrio was brought in to keep working on it. Chris Terrio's resume at this time only included one feature film, which was Ben Affleck's Argo. I'd always thought that he had other writing credits to his name at this time, and putting this film on a relatively rookie writer is pretty insane. I mean, Argo might be a good movie, but I haven't seen it. But it could also just be a flash-in-the-pan success for him, considering his other writer credits since then were on Justice League and The Rise of Skywalker, and he hasn't had a film come out since 2021.
I guess in Warner Brothers' eyes, he might have been worth the risk because he had just won an Oscar for Argo, and Argo had won Best Picture, but it is pretty crazy to put all your chips on a guy who's only got one major movie under his name.
I think there might have been some kind of finagling with Ben Affleck too, because I know he was a producer, at least on this, if not an executive producer, and he was like, he wanted to look over the script too, I think. Maybe to just, make him a little happy. They were like, yeah, we'll have your guy do it.
I could see that.
I mean, I guess it's not bad that they did, that they let this rookie guy take over. It's just looking back on it, maybe it wasn't the best choice. Snyder mentioned in an interview before the film's release that he had originally planned for both Riddler and Joker to be featured on screen, but he and Terrio decided against it in the end to dedicate more time to the two titular characters. This means we potentially could have never had Jared Leto as Joker, and we would have had a Zack Snyder created Joker, which maybe would have been more comic book accurate and not as horrible.
It would have been interesting to see Snyder's idea for the Joker. I wonder how much of the Suicide Squad's Joker was David Ayer, and if Snyder had any say in that.
I feel like it was a lot of David Ayer because a lot of his movies kind of have that crime element to them. And I think that would be more of his realm where giving the Joker a grill and tattoos all over. I don't know if I'd see Zack Snyder doing all that. The state of movies, DC, and the characters at release. Movies releasing around this time included the Divergent series Allegiant, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2, Hardcore Henry, The Jungle Book, Green Room, and Ratchet & Clank, which really is not much competition here in the superhero movie category. At most, maybe Ratchet & Clank, but that's a big if.
It's also worth noting that Marvel's Captain America Civil War would come out only a month and a half later, so while it was far enough away to not directly compete, the pressure and tension was there between the two companies. In fact, both were originally slated to be released on the same day, May 6, 2016. Warner Brothers' explanation for moving the release date for BVS forward was that it would make the movie better, though it was more likely to avoid direct competition with the other juggernaut superhero franchise.
Yeah, it would make the movie better because it would make more money. Duh.
Yeah, you're not really fooling anybody with that.
It's also worth noting that Marvel's Civil War was actually greenlit in direct response to the announcement of Batman v Superman.
I feel like this might be the only time that Disney, the owners of Marvel Entertainment, felt threatened by Warner Brothers' attempt at the competing franchise. Maybe the other exception being Wonder Woman because of how much money it made, and with Ike Perlmutter shit-canning any attempt at a Captain Marvel solo film.
Didn't he also nix an earlier Black Widow movie too?
Oh yeah, well, Ike Perlmutter, we could do a whole episode about Ike Perlmutter, but he vetoed Captain Marvel and Black Widow solo movies because he didn't think anybody would go see them. And he also said that nobody would ever go see a movie with a black superhero lead. So he kept stopping Black Panther from getting made.
a racist and a misogynist.
Yeah, he's
a stand-up guy.
He's a real stand-up guy, and Black Panther and Captain Marvel both made $1 billion, so...
I think you are right, though. I think that Wonder Woman was probably the only other time where they were like, oh shit. DC Comics had gone through sort of a soft refresh in the comics through their DC Rebirth initiative, which was bringing their characters and universe more in line with their pre-Flashpoint form, while also squeezing specific New 52 eras in as well. In our last episode, we noted that the New 52 launched in 2011, and likely had influence on Man of Steel and the character. In this new DC era, the characters tended to be redesigned to be a little bit more in line with their appearance of the characters in the films.
And I forget, did you read anything from Rebirth?
I read a couple things, but I think, like, the biggest thing that would affect this is that, like, so in the 2011 New 52, the Superman was, like, darker and edgier, and then with DC Rebirth, they brought back pre-Flashpoint Superman, who was, like, classic Superman. So basically, by the time that this movie came out, they had, like, shit-canned their dark, edgy Superman and went back. But now, like, you have this kind of dark, edgy Superman in the movies, and then it's kind of just the opposite in the comics.
That is pretty interesting. At Warner Brothers, Jeff Robinoff, the Warner Brothers Motion Picture Group president we had mentioned in our previous episode, was ousted from the company only 10 days after the Man of Steel release. With the retirement of longtime Warner Brothers chairman and CEO Barry Meyer, Robinoff had been jockeying for the position, along with Warner TV chief Bruce Rosenblum and Warner Brothers home entertainment president Kevin Tsujihara. Things got pretty ugly as they all competed for the job, and when Tsujihara eventually won, Rosenblum and Robinoff's departures soon followed. In Robinoff's place would be a trio of executives who all previously worked under him. I feel like this sort of succession type of drama inside the Warner Brothers C-suite exemplifies the messiness behind the scenes of the DCEU that's only going to get worse as time goes on, and strikes me as sort of an ill omen for happening so close to Man of Steel's release.
And was Jeff Robinov ousted because of the response to Man of Steel? Or was it just like sort of a coincidental thing?
I think it was just a coincidence because it had only come out 10 days ago, and I think it made plenty of money. I mean, we talked about in our last episode, Warner Brothers was happy with the amount of cash it brought in. I think it's just because it worked out that Tsujihara got the job shortly before Man of Steel came out.
I do like the idea that they were fighting for this job, and then Tsujihara won, and then they conveniently left, because there's definitely some sort of thing there.
Yeah, it would be interesting to get a closer look at the details of the drama going on behind the scenes there, but there haven't been a lot of leaks about it, or emails, or interviews, so it's something that's probably just going to stay with them until they're dead.
On October 15th, 2014, Tsujihara announced the DCEU slate. Man of Steel was retroactively added as the first film of the DCEU, which was in 2013. 2016 had Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Suicide Squad. 2017 had Wonder Woman and Justice League Part 1. 2018 had The Flash and Aquaman. 2019 had Shazam and Justice League Part 2. And then finally, 2020 had Cyborg and a Green Lantern Corps movie. There was also plans for a Man of Steel sequel and a solo Batman movie to be released somewhere in between. So this was a 6-year slate spanning 12 movies, which was quite ambitious. And as we'll see in this podcast series, these plans don't necessarily pan out.
I have a fun fact. You said that Man of Steel was retroactively added as the first film. Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern film was going to be retroactively added as the start of a franchise to compete with Marvel, but it didn't make enough money. Man of Steel cleared the threshold for the amount of money that they were happy making, so that's why Man of Steel got to be the first step in their franchise instead of Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern.
I feel like that had even worse reception than Man of Steel, so why would they even want to, like, put that in?
I don't know. Maybe that was just their plan before it came out, and they were hoping to see how it would do at the box office. It's also worth noting that at this point, the franchise wasn't even called the DCEU. Warner Brothers did not have an official name early on, and while many online referred to it as the DCCU, which I think is terrible, the online community eventually latched onto the name that we all know now, coined by an Entertainment Weekly article by Keith Staskovich in 2015. In promotional material leading up to Batman v Superman, Jeff Johns and others at DC repeatedly referred to the franchise as the Justice League universe.
I think that's the perfect encapsulation of the universe, is that they didn't start with like a name in mind and then just kind of didn't even have one for the whole run. And then by the time it was already in a free fall, they were like, it's the DCEU.
Yeah, it really does sum it all up, doesn't it? And before they even get to the point of accepting DCEU as like the official name of the franchise, they go through some other ones which might even be sillier than Justice League Universe.
The Justice League Batman v Superman Justice League Dawn of Justice universe. Now on to the plot synopsis and discussion. So we start the film with a flashback to Bruce Wayne's childhood as he runs from his parents' funeral. He falls into a cave where a circling vortex of bats elevates him back to the surface. In the present, 18 months after his cataclysmic battle with General Zod in Metropolis, Superman has become a controversial figure. Bruce is now a billionaire who has operated in Gotham City as the masked vigilante Batman for 20 years. Having witnessed the battle in person, including deaths of his own Wayne Enterprises employees, he sees Superman as an existential threat to humanity. So, immediately when the movie opens, the music is amazing. And I know we didn't bring it up in the last part, we both forgot to mention it, but Hans Zimmer in Man of Steel and this, both the soundtracks are spectacular. Probably some of my favorite movie soundtracks ever.
Yeah, they are really good, and the new music that Junkie XL brings to this that you hear later in the movie, I think is also pretty good.
I wasn't really sure if we needed the recap of the Waynes dying, because Batman has one of the most iconic and well-known origins. And additionally, I know it's usually supposed to be a random crime most of the time, but the way that Martha was shot seemed a little bit less random and more brutal, because the way that she's shot in the flashback is they point the gun at her face, and then when it shoots it snaps the pearl necklace. And it just seemed overly brutal almost, and made the crime not seem random.
Like it was supposed to be an assassination or something?
Yeah, because if you're mugging someone, do you point your gun at their head and shoot them? I don't, it's just seemed weird to me.
Yeah, I agree we didn't need the origin story of Batman again. It is definitely the most famous one, except for maybe Superman or Spider-Man. But I do think it's short enough because it's just a montage during the opening credits that I didn't really mind. I think if it had been a full 15-minute thing in the movie, I probably would have groaned and rolled my eyes. But as a little montage, I thought it was okay. I think Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne's pretty cool. It's a shame we never got him in a Flashpoint adaptation.
Yeah, I guess I didn't hate it. I don't mind it as the opener because, they have to have those kind of opening credits somewhere. So using that, and then I guess kind of using it to segue him into the universe as well, since he's just kind of being retroactively added to it.
I think it's really funny that the Wayne Enterprise employees don't do anything until Bruce calls them. Because if they look out their window, they can clearly see the giant ship with a blue laser cutting the city apart.
Bruce, the building next to us got fucking flattened. Don't leave. Our stock prices.
I also do really like the idea of adding Bruce into Metropolis retroactively. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that adding him back in to Metropolis is probably one of the best ways that they could shoehorn him into the universe, because him rushing in to try to save people as this whole thing is going down is very Batman and Bruce Wayne. I think I did have one problem with it though. I almost felt like the scene would have worked better if the person he was talking to on the phone when he dies was someone like Lucius Fox, because he was just in the whole Dark Knight trilogy. And so people would have gone in, and even if it's a different universe, they know who he is. And, who is this Jack guy? Because Bruce is, but that's my family or whatever, but this is just, as far as we know, some random guy.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I mean, people already know Morgan Freeman is Lucius Fox, and it would help us connect with Bruce's feelings a little bit more. And, the scene does explain his distrust and dislike of Superman, but you're right. If there was more of a connection that we had between us and Bruce and whoever this guy was, it would help sell it a little bit better. And we do find out later that Alfred's the one who's making his gadgets and stuff, so Lucius doesn't seem to exist at this point.
Yeah, it would have been the perfect opportunity to kind of maybe up the stakes a little bit more.
Definitely.
Because I didn't think that they were going to use him anyways. I don't think he has a space in this universe.
In my notes here, I wrote down the big question. Was this all originally planned, or was the public sentiment about Man of Steel's final act taken into account when they wrote the script? To me, it feels like that's the case, because it took 3 years for this movie to come out. And I think in those 3 years, people were very vocal about how much they disliked all the collateral damage and the violence and stuff.
Yeah, I think I agree that it was probably a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek way to kind of say that, this wasn't just mindless killing, there's people that actually died in this universe or whatever. There was definitely some interviews that I was reading where, like, Zack Snyder and Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill were saying, like, yeah, there was a lot of controversy about the ending of the movie and how Superman, like, didn't save anyone, and, like, all these people died, and we kind of wanted to go back and show that, like, these heroes are more heroic. I think one more thing during this was, so when he gets to the building and there's the guy crushed under the steel beam, he's like, "Oh, Wallace, are you okay?" And he goes, "Actually, I'm Wally." And I just think it's really funny because people who are DC fans watching this are obviously going to assume that that's like Wally West, because that's one of their biggest characters in the comics. And to have the character go out of the way to say that I'm Wally, I just feel like it was setting up, or like being a red herring at trying to set up or trick people that they were setting up a character when in actuality it wasn't. And there was a couple instances of this throughout the movie. There's so many different names and you'd give it Wally. It just seemed dumb.
Yeah, there's thousands of names they could have picked from. So it is weird that they picked one related to one of the most famous people that they have in the comics.
Did you have anything else about this? The only other thing I had was probably, I did like where we see Ben Affleck look up at Superman as he's crashing back down to the earth.
Yeah, I didn't have any other notes for this part.
Shout out downtown Detroit in the opening, though.
Yeah, this movie was shot in Detroit, which is pretty cool, because for those of you listening who don't know, we're from here. And I remember it was just the talk of the town, like people couldn't shut up about how cool it was that the new Batman movie was being filmed in Detroit.
I wanted to be an extra so bad.
Meanwhile, a group of freelance divers retrieve a huge chunk of kryptonite from the world engine's remains in the Indian Ocean. Lois Lane interviews a general in Nairobi, Africa, but her cameraman is executed when he is found in possession of a CIA tracking device. Anatoly Knyazev is the general's head of security, betraying the general, killing all of his men, and leaving before Superman arrives to save Lois. Superman is blamed for the deaths of the villagers who were killed by Anatoly. Perry White launches a media campaign against Superman. So, this is as good a time as any to bring up something. There are two versions of this film. There is the theatrical cut that everybody saw when they bought a ticket and sat their ass down in the theater. And there is the version that came out on physical media and on streaming later called the Ultimate Edition. The Ultimate Edition adds like 40 minutes of footage to the movie, making a movie that's already like 2.5 hours, a movie that's over 3 hours long. It's pretty nuts. And for this, I watched both versions back to back. You're not going to give me a kudos?
No.
That's okay. I don't need it.
No, I'll applaud him for watching them back to back. Well, maybe not back to back, but at least watching them both before actually doing this.
Shut up. Shut up. It was back. They were I didn't watch any movies in between, so it's technically back to back. It wasn't the same day, but it was in the same 12 hours, 24 hours.
You get half a gold star.
But in the Ultimate Cut, we learned that the CIA photographer that she has with her is actually Jimmy Olsen. That is completely omitted from the theatrical cut.
Yeah, because they didn't need it in there.
Also, the woman in the hearing and later being interviewed on TV, Kahina, has more time to explain herself, which is good, because I feel like in the theatrical cut, when she's talking about what happened in the village and how Superman's responsible for all their deaths, it doesn't really make sense to me.
Well, I also don't think that they show them actually, like, killing... Maybe they kill them, but they don't go through the effort to burn the bodies in the theatrical cut. And then when she's like, he rained fire from the skies, and, like, they were all burned to death. But then, like, they don't show that, so we don't know what she's really talking about.
Yeah, we don't see any of it besides Anatoly just shooting them in the head. But in the Ultimate Cut, they do show them burning the bodies, so it looks like Superman's heat ray vision did something to them. Also, I love how Superman showed up in just the nick of time to miss the opportunity to save Jimmy Olsen. He showed up 5 seconds after he could have saved him from being executed, which I think is great. That's a good way to establish the tone for this movie.
I think that the whole like general scene also definitely could have been trimmed. Like, I don't think we needed to know that that was Jimmy Olsen. There's the whole scene in the Ultimate Edition where we have these guys on the horses, and we follow them for like 3 minutes, and he's like, we gotta gear up and like save this reporter or something, and they don't do anything. So I don't know why that was even included in the movie. and I can definitely see why it was taken out of the theatrical cut. The only thing that they do is they show up and they're like, oh, all these people are dead.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the stuff added in the Ultimate Cut doesn't really add to the movie. I mean, I think the theatrical cuts definitely got problems, and some of it's cleaned up in the Ultimate Cut, but it also adds a lot of stuff which makes it just as confusing in different ways.
Yeah, I think there's some middle ground where some of the stuff from the Ultimate Edition was good that it was left in, but then there's other stuff like the horse guys where it's like, this did not need to be in here.
Yeah, there's some stuff later I will get into that I really have a problem with the Ultimate Cut.
The long-haired greasy guy, also known as Anatoly Knyzev, is actually KG Beast. Although he's not named KG Beast in the film, that is who it is in the comics. And a fun fact is that Jim Starlin, who is the creator of KG Beast, said that he got paid more for them using KG Beast in this film than he got paid by Marvel for using Thanos, who he also created. Which I think is insane, because Thanos was like the whole big bad for a whole phase or two of Marvel, and this guy isn't even named by his like villain name, and they paid him more for that.
Yeah, that is pretty messed up, and it really speaks to what the working conditions and treatment of comic writers are like between the two companies.
And I think that's something that a lot of people have said that they don't like at Marvel, is that they don't pay that much compared to DC. Like, they had that whole thing where Brian Michael Bendis left Marvel to go to DC. I'm pretty sure one of the reasons he did it was because he was mad that, maybe not him, but other people or him weren't getting paid like royalties for their work. I think what also this doesn't talk about is we're introduced to Batman. I think it just completely glossed over that in the summary, but we're introduced to Batman when we see him with those rescued Asian women in the building, the abandoned building. What did you think of his introduction in this?
I thought it was really cool, to be honest. This was my first time watching the film, and I wasn't sure what to expect from him. All I knew is that he does kill people in this movie, which I take issue with, as I'm sure you do, and most people who watched it. But his introduction was really creepy and cool, and I liked it a lot. Like, you can tell he's doing something heroic, but he's striking fear into people at the same time, so I think it was pretty effective.
I think that might be like one of the only times where we actually see people like scared of Batman in a movie. I mean, even just down to the costume, like a lot of the costumes kind of look just silly, but this one actually, he's like big and bulky, and I'd be scared of him too.
Yeah, I personally think this is the best design he's ever had in a movie.
I definitely agree. The only thing I have to say about it is that they put too much muscle padding in it. You don't really see it in the movie, but in some of the promotional shots, like Ben Affleck, Batman looks just bloated and like too big.
The one thing about the costume that I took issue with when they first showed it off is I didn't like the texture of it. It sort of looked like it's made of like paper mache or something. You know, it's got like this like rough layered kind of gauze look to it.
It's like almost like burlap kind of.
Yeah, a little bit, but it grew on me over time. I think it looks a lot better in the movie than it did in that first picture they showed off.
Yeah, I did love how the tone was set in this scene with the cops and Batman, and I'd kind of like to see a movie of this. Maybe it could be something in the DCU where like Batman maybe isn't the main character, but he's kind of like stalking or like kind of a scary presence that maybe some henchmen or something have to deal with, because that'd be a really interesting movie, I think.
Zach Krieger, the guy who did Weapons and Barbarian, he's talked about a script he has, which would kind of be like an adaptation of that Batman the Animated Series episode about the henchman who accidentally kills Batman, or thinks that he kills Batman. So it's not exactly what you're talking about, but there is a sort of adjacent project that could happen.
I think I did hear about that.
It's not like Gunn gave him permission to make it or anything, but he wants to make it, and the script is ready, so...
I think he said it was like a passion project or something, so it wasn't even like he was commissioned to make it. He just had the idea and was like, yeah, I'll just write it for fun. But now that he's made Weapons, and I think he probably has a deal with Warner Brothers, I could see it coming to fruition. The only other thing I had about this, why is Batman hiding from the cops? Because he's not new. As established throughout the movie, he's been in Gotham for like 20 years. And I don't know why the cops like are scared or why he shoots at him. Or like why he doesn't just confront them, because, you know, they know he exists. It's not like he has to hide or anything. And they don't have it out for him, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I didn't think about that. He has been active for 20 years, according to the movie, so they really shouldn't be afraid of him, but the new guy is. And I think even if you're a new guy on the force, you know who the Batman is. You're going into the police force, you're gonna know who the Batman is. You should probably brace yourself for that and not almost blow your partner's face off with a shotgun. But also, he has been acting different. Like, the seasoned cop who's, like, telling the rookie cop to knock it off, you know, it's just Batman or whatever, he's the one who is freaked out by the branding on the criminal at the end of that scene. So maybe this is a sign that, like, the police are trusting him less because he's becoming more brutal with his tactics. That's all just my theory, you know, they don't ever explicitly establish the relationship. And also, it's kind of weird because in Justice League, we see him talking to Gordon. So, I mean, clearly he's still on good terms with the police to some degree.
Yeah, I think you could be getting at something there. It might just be the sort of mindset he's in Justice League. He's a little different. So maybe he's kind of fixed that bond between him and the Gotham police.
Yeah, maybe it's the events of this movie that kind of turned things back around for him. I think he's a great casting choice, Ben Affleck is. And I also think Jeremy Irons, although he doesn't have a lot to do, is a great Alfred.
Yeah, I agree. Ben Affleck is great as Batman. I think it makes me want to wish that they cast someone maybe a bit better for Clark. Because I think that he outshines Henry Cavill. Yeah. Not like fully, because Henry's actually better in this film than in Man of Steel. But I do think that there's kind of a degree of separation between them.
Yeah, it doesn't help that, especially in the theatrical cut, this feels more like a Batman movie that has Superman in it than the other way around, which is how it should be. In the Ultimate Cut, they do add a lot of scenes of Clark doing investigative work around Gotham, talking to people who've met Batman or heard of Batman. You know, he gets more screen time in general, whether that's just him with his mom or him doing reporting work. But yeah, I would say Affleck does a better job acting. Although, yes, Cavill does do a better job here than he did last time.
Yeah, I definitely, that was my favorite thing about the Ultimate Edition, is that it actually adds back in Clark's scenes, because you're right, without these scenes in the theatrical cut, it's very much a Batman movie. So, moving on, Clark Kent, which is Superman's civilian identity, seeks to condemn Batman's form of justice in Daily Planet articles. Meanwhile, Bruce learns that Russian weapon trafficker, can I just say KG Beast?
Yeah.
Okay. Bruce learns that Russian trafficker, KG Beast, has been contacting LexCorp mogul Lex Luthor. At LexCorp, Luthor attempts to persuade U.S. Senator June Finch to allow him to import kryptonite discovered at the World Engine site, so that he can use it as a deterrent against future Kryptonian threats. She declines, but Luthor makes alternative plans with Finch's subordinate, who grants him access to Zod's corpse and the Kryptonian scout ship. Just something funny to start off with is, I saw someone online say that in the new Superman movie, they were like, it's really inappropriate when Lois and Clark made out on the counter and he was kissing her neck. But then, and you know, I'm just assuming that it's probably one of the Snyder fanboys, but in this movie, they literally have sex in the bathtub, and Lois is like naked.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. Clark jumps into the bathtub fully clothed and starts making out with her. And it also bugs me because they push most of the water out of the tub. Like, it's just displaced onto the floor. And in my head, I'm just thinking, you're gonna have to clean that up! You're flooding your bathroom!
He just drills a hole, and with his laser vision, it leaks down to the next apartment below.
It's someone else's problem. So I actually love Lex Luthor in the first scene. I think Jesse Eisenberg does a good job in this movie with what he's given. I think his performance is charming. I think he's got a very fun sort of cadence and energy, and in some ways it kind of reminds me of Nicholas Holt's Lex from James Gunn's Superman movie. I do think his characterization's a bit off. Like, this is not the Lex I would have written or the Lex I would have directed, but I don't think it's in any way Eisenberg's fault, and I don't think Lex is a bad character. Like, Tech Bro Lex sounds awful in theory, but there's just something about it that works, and I really think it's his performance that makes it work. I saw a lot of people online comparing it to his character in The Social Network, where he plays Mark Zuckerberg, but I don't think those two could be any further apart. There's people who compare him to Heath Ledger's Joker, or just the Joker in general, but I think it's pretty different.
I do kind of wonder if, because earlier we said that they had initially thought to have Joker and Riddler, and it almost feels like they maybe rolled some of their personality and then combined it into Lex, because he's very neurotic and kind of crazy, which is maybe a bit out of character compared to usual Lex.
I can see that. I could see him playing either of those villains. Maybe when they were writing, they had him in mind for one role, and then they kind of shifted him into another. I don't know. But I do like his character in the movie. I think his motivations get a little muddled by the end, and the Ultimate Edition clears it up a tiny bit, but not by much.
I agree. I did like him in the movie, though. People online do complain that it's not Lex Luthor or whatever, but he does good in the role. Regardless of if they think that he's the character or not, I think that he acts it well.
Yeah, he got done dirty. Jesse Eisenberg got done dirty. Maybe more than anyone else in this franchise. Definitely, at least, out of the ones introduced so far.
Going back to the bathtub scene at the beginning for a minute, I did like how Clark did kind of look maybe a bit more nerdy here, maybe trying to hide his identity a bit more, but I didn't like that scene as a whole because it started off well, where she's like questioning their relationship together, and she's saying like, if you're always coming to save me or whatever, like, isn't that an issue? And then instead of actually having them, like, talk about it and go back and forth and, like, try and justify their relationship together, he just gives her a flower, and then that's when they have sex in the bathtub or whatever. And it's kind of like the complete opposite of the new Superman movie, where they actually have, like, a lengthy scene and, like, argue about it. And here he just kind of is like, fuck off, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, I think that encapsulates a lot of the problems I have with this movie. Like, the movie and this scene raise interesting questions. Like, what Lois brings up is pretty compelling, and if they actually had a discussion about it, that would be very interesting. But instead, they cut it short for some action. And I'm not talking about people punching each other. I'm talking about the other kind of action. But later on, they do the same thing with Superman and the congressional panel, and they raise questions about the ethics of this guy running around acting as like a rogue agent, independent of any sovereign nation, and intervening in these conflicts. And there are interesting discussions to be had there, and the movie, well, I suppose maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but the movie cuts all of that short for a bunch of big dumb action scenes.
I have a note where when Alfred hands Batman the paper and it shows the branded guy on it, and then he's like, oh, new rules. And I wish that Alfred was harder on Bruce for his actions with branding the criminals, because it feels like he just kind of brushes it off. Because he's like kind of his father figure. You'd think he'd kind of be like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, it's not how I raised you.
Yeah, and that would have made the conflict between Bruce and Alfred more interesting. I mean, they have no conflict, but this would have created conflict, and that would have been compelling. It would have just made the movie more interesting and given Alfred more to do if he had some kind of objection to what Bruce had been doing, for sure.
The only other thing I have is that it's funny how they claim that Superman is the first metahuman, and then later this is completely contradicted by other DC movies. And, like, it's way down the line, but...
Yeah, by a lot of movies. I guess, yeah, by that point, as we'll find out...
Oh yeah, because Wonder Woman.
Yeah. In this movie, it's contradicted by Wonder Woman.
You're right.
But later on, it gets contradicted by so many other projects that, yeah, I mean, they just completely give up on maintaining any sense of continuity with these things.
And I guess you could kind of like say that Wonder Woman was like secret or whatever, but the other ones later in Black Adam, the Justice Society, is clearly like kind of an open public secret.
So the last thing we see here is the Wayne Enterprise employee that Bruce saves in the beginning. He vandalizes a Superman statue in the middle of Metropolis, and he gets arrested with a potential sentencing for up to 40 years in prison for terrorism. That's kind of crazy.
What do you mean he threw those smoke bombs at the police officers and was climbing on a statue?
Yeah, you know what? They should have just shot him.
He's disturbing the peace.
They should have just killed him right there.
Yeah, you're right.
And the other thing there is, I thought the Daily Planet scene, and all of the Daily Planet scenes, were very good. I'm glad to see Perry White have more to do in this movie. Lawrence Fishburne is great.
Yeah, he did not have much to do in the first one.
Also, when we see Bruce and Alfred, discussing the branding and how their methods have changed, we see the costume of a dead Robin, presumably. Is that supposed to be Jason?
Well, you would think, right? Would you like to guess which one it actually is?
I mean, I guess it's got to be Dick, right?
Oh yeah, because why not? Why not just go with the already established canon that more people know and then just ruin it by making it a completely different character.
Yeah, I guess that explains why, he's so alone. Like, it's just him and Alfred, I guess. But that does kind of stink. And it also speaks to how short-sighted this franchise is with its planning, because they were going to have a solo Batfleck movie. And, if they were to keep this thing going for 10, 20 years, they probably would have wanted to include Robins at a certain point. So to have it established in this second film that there aren't any Robins and there haven't been any Robins for 20 years, you're really cutting yourself off from a potential for storytelling there.
Yeah, I think it works if they actually followed like the strict 5-movie plan or whatever that they were doing. But I mean, even Suicide Squad wasn't in the initial slate, or like the Zack Snyder 5-film arc. If they wanted to do a Teen Titans movie, then they don't have a Robin. They're clearly just gonna like retcon it or something and then be like, no, that was Jason.
So we didn't mention this in the first film because it didn't exist yet, but you're talking about a 5-film slate from Zack Snyder. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, it was supposed to be Man of Steel, and then once they like kind of retroactively made the universe or like the series, it was supposed to be Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and then I think 3 Justice Leagues, and then that would have been like the Zack Snyder arc.
And they completely threw that out so they could make a bigger slate with a bunch of other characters. Interesting. So Warner Brothers went over his head with that.
I mean, I don't think it's not like they went behind his back and did it. I'm assuming that everything that they were doing with the other movies was like fitting in, at least until Justice League failed, and then they threw everything out the window and then just said, fuck it, do whatever, we need money.
Interesting. So Bruce attends a gala at LexCorp to steal encrypted data from the company's mainframe, but antiquities dealer Diana Prince steals it first, later returning it to Bruce. While decrypting the drive, Bruce dreams of a post-apocalyptic world where he leads rebels against an evil Superman. He is awakened by an unidentified person appearing through a portal who tells him that Lois Lane is the key, urging him to find the others before vanishing. The decrypted drive reveals Luthor's files on several metahumans across the globe, one being Diana, who appears in a photo from World War I, and others. Wayne contemplates weaponizing the kryptonite to go to war with Superman. I think, all in all, the gala scene is probably one of the best sequences of the movie. I thought it was pretty good. I like the stuff with Clark, I like the stuff with Bruce, and I do like in the Ultimate Cut that Perry specifically says that Clark was invited. It's not that they were just sending any Daily Planet reporter to cover it. Perry says Clark was specifically chosen by the hosts to cover the event, which, foreshadows pretty early on that Lex knows his identity.
Yeah, I think it's a nice subtle way to kind of not only show that he knows their identity, but also kind of give an early hint of how deep Lex's plan is, because he's already setting up a little bit of contention between them. He has them shake hands and he shakes Superman's hand. He's like, oh, don't pick a fight with this guy, or it might be with Batman, but either way, he's kind of planting seeds once he gets them together. And I do agree that that's one of the better scenes in the movie, because you're kind of dancing around the idea that they don't know who each other are, out of costume. And they're kind of two forces going against each other, and they don't even know they're in the same space.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
I did think it was funny that when Bruce shows up and Clark goes, who's that? I'm like, dude, that's the billionaire Bruce Wayne. What do you mean you don't know who that is? You're a journalist.
Yeah, and I mean, he's been living in Metropolis for, a year and a half at this point?
Yeah, and they're right across the ocean or the river, whatever, from each other.
Yeah, that's right. In this version of the DC world, they're separated by a harbor. They're along the same shoreline. You can see them on the horizon from each other. So they're not that far apart. It's like New York and New Jersey.
Yeah, I think it literally is based off those in this one. But this is also kind of a part where we see Superman actually save people, because he goes to that factory fire that's happening in Mexico, I think?
Yeah, something like that.
And it's finally we get to see him save some people, because up to this point, he hasn't saved anyone besides Lois.
Failed to save Jimmy, yeah. Or any of those villagers. I also really like that montage. It's another sequence where the music really stood out to me. But would it kill him to smile? He looks so depressed in every single shot. I also thought the nightmare sequence was really cool. I thought it was visually exciting, and I was on board with it. But as soon as the movie establishes it as something to be taken literally, because of future Flash showing up to warn Bruce about Superman, I think it immediately turns sour for me. Because as a dream sequence about Bruce's fears and paranoia, it works, but we see it followed up in the Snyder cut of Justice League, and again, this movie establishes that the nightmare is more of a vision than a dream. I don't like that. I mean, we already know that Superman's not evil by the end of the movie, so I don't really know why he doubled down on this in the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, I think it would have been better if it was more of a dream of what he's thinking, because it would then reinforce, like, he's thinking this all the time. He's thinking that Superman's a threat and, like, he's evil. But then once the parademons come in with the giant Omega symbol, and then it's kind of hinting at it's the future, I think it does a disservice to itself. The only other thing I can think of is that, like, it's some sort of future vision that he sees because, you know, Flash travels back and talks to him, and, like, it's some sort of memory that, like, goes through the wormhole with him or something. I don't know, like, there's gotta be some weird shit going on, because why is he seeing that in his dreams? Why is he seeing the future? It almost feels like it's a scene that they added in because they were like, this is a little slow, we need some action.
Maybe? I don't know. I think the whole thing is pretty weird. Like, if they had just kept it as a dream, I would say it's great and, like, one of the most memorable parts of the movie either way, I guess. But fuck, man. And the whole thing is undercut because by the end of the movie, he's totally cool with Superman. And Superman's still a good guy. So, I don't know. I'm not really a fan of how they take this.
The only thing I can think of is during that scene, he wakes up from his dream and he sees the Flash. And then once the Flash is gone, he, like, wakes up again.
Oh, does he?
Yeah. That when I was watching it, I thought that maybe it was some sort of thing where, like, he did see the future, and then, like, once he saw the Flash, it, like, changed the future or something, and then he, like, woke up, and then the timeline's, like, fixed or something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know.
That's a fun interpretation. I do like that. You know, it squares it in my mind, but then also in the Snyder Cut, we see more of this nightmare sequence, so...
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we could save that discussion for when we get to that movie, but...
Well, I believe this was also supposed to tie into, like, Justice League 2 and 3. So I think that it also doesn't help because they never really get to follow up. Even with the nightmare sequence in the Snyder Cut Justice League, that also feels kind of shoehorned in.
Oh, yeah. The other problem I have with the nightmare sequence is, like, a conceptual one. Why would you take the franchise in this direction? Like, establishing that in the future, Superman may end up being a villain and that the Earth may be like an apocalyptic wasteland. Like, to me, that makes the long-term prospects for the franchise seem very limited.
Do you mean to the effect that, like, you kind of know where it's going if they did follow that?
Right. I mean, like, this is where they're saying the story is going to end up. It's foreshadowing this, like, Mad Max world with an evil Superman. And this is supposed to be competing with the MCU. You know, it's supposed to be, like, an ongoing thing, a bunch of characters, one story after another. But even with the 5-movie plan, it does seem very, very limiting.
I think also if they did keep up that 5-movie plan, while also expanding out to all these other movies that Zack Snyder wasn't thinking of initially, it'd create a big kind of weird problem where if this did come to fruition and, like, the world is overtaken or something, like, where's all the other heroes?
Yeah, that's a great point. How are projects like that, you know, gonna tie in? I mean, there's, you know, it just seems like there's a lot of different voices clashing. I don't know.
I don't like to be one of those people who, because sometimes you see people on there like, where's Spider-Man and the Avengers or whatever? But it's kind of different here because if the whole world is, like, turned to this desert or whatever, like, that's unavoidable to actually bring in other characters.
Yeah.
We have Lois Lane going to see General Swanwick in Washington with the Bullet kind of side plot. There we have Jenna Malone's character, who is not in the theatrical cut and who people thought was cast as Batgirl. But then she's just some random scientist that's like, yeah, this is some weird bullet made by LexCorp. And then we have this whole thing where Lois Lane goes to see the general, and then, like, 20 minutes later goes back and is like, here's this bullet that I showed you earlier, take it, go look at it. And it just seemed like they could have just cut those two and then made them one.
Yeah, it's just one example where the Ultimate Edition cut of the movie adds stuff that just makes it a little messier or more confusing, while clearing up other things. Because I do like that they add more scenes with Lois doing investigative work, but also it just seems like too much, and also it doesn't seem like it matters.
I forgot to mention the last episode, but there's the character who's always with the general in the last movie is Major Ferris, and then her full name is Carrie Ferris. And then in DC Comics, Carol Ferris is Hal Jordan's major love interest, who has a military background with her father. So then this is another thing, like the Wally character from before. Is this supposed to be a tease, or is this the same character, or is it just a coincidence where they have a similarly named character?
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it seems like it might just be another coincidence. But you would think that they'd have someone on set who's, like, knowledgeable about the comics and stuff. Not like a script supervisor, but, like, somebody that would be on the lookout for coincidences like this.
A lore expert.
Yeah, somebody who will help them not make these sorts of mistakes.
So next, as Batman chases the kryptonite that was imported from the port, he's confronted by Superman, who stops Batman. As a result, the kryptonite reaches Luthor. However, Batman had put a tracking beacon on the truck and knows the location of the kryptonite.
I like the Batmobile sequence. I thought it was pretty cool.
I liked it until he started, like, killing them.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
He was going pretty ham on it. The part where he, like, there's a car rolling and he just shoots through it and it explodes. I'm like, they're dead.
Yeah, I got a problem with that. We mentioned it earlier, but yes, Batman does kill people in this movie. If not directly, indirectly. But yeah, some people definitely got crushed by cars piling on top of other cars or rolling over and then getting shot. But I like the Batmobile. It looks a lot better than the Tumbler, and I think that it's a pretty fun sequence.
Gotta hate the Tumbler.
The Tumbler might be the ugliest superhero car ever conceived.
I don't even think it's cool.
No, it's supposed to be like ultra grounded or whatever. I don't give a shit. The Batman gave him a Charger with bulletproof windows. Good enough. And a jet engine on the back. Good enough.
I think my biggest complaint about this scene was them actually having their confrontation when Batman turns the corner and Superman's there, because this has been building up the whole movie, and then they say like 3 words to each other and they go their separate ways.
Yeah, I think this is one of those instances we were talking about where the movie has the potential for interesting dialogue and conversation, something that would really be stimulating intellectually. You know, you could talk about the clashing ideologies that these two have and why they don't like each other, and instead, Superman just threatens to kill him and then leaves, which also does not feel like a very Superman thing to do.
And especially because at this point, we've seen Clark investigating the branding, which people are getting killed in jail when they're branded by Batman. So it's not even just the fact that he's doing this whole car chase, but he knows what he's been doing already with the branding. And then he's just like, you need to stop. He should be like, dude, like, what the fuck are you doing?
He says, the bat is dead, bury it, consider this mercy. I don't ever want to hear Superman say, consider this mercy. And you're right, like, we've seen Clark do the investigative work. In the Ultimate Edition, we see even more of it. And also, in the Ultimate Edition, it's established that Lex's henchman, KG Beast, is paying off a prisoner to shank a guy that we saw earlier with the Bat brand. So this is showing us that Lex is the one who's staging the deaths against the Bat-branded criminals. But this is one of those instances where I think the Ultimate Edition doesn't actually make the movie better, because prisoners are going to end up dead either way with the Bat brand. It really doesn't matter who's killing them from Batman's perspective. What I mean is, like, Batman knows that people who are branded by him are dying in prison, and he still continues to brand these people. So whether it's Lex behind the shankings or whatever, it doesn't matter. Batman knows that these people are dying and is still sending more of them to their slaughter. So whether it's Lex, as it's revealed in the Ultimate Edition cut, or it's just random acts of violence from other prisoners in the theatrical cut, it doesn't make a difference to the story. Batman doesn't give a shit either way.
Well, I think it's more of like to draw Superman in than to do anything to Batman.
But my point is, the prisoners are dying anyway. I guess it adds a little bit to Lex's plan, but, like, if you're going off the theatrical cut, Lex needed to do anything there in the first place, because the prisoners are already killing each other. You know what I mean? It works in both versions, but one of them is much longer than the other one.
I think it might, to me at least, it helps or I like it better that it's Lex doing it all. But I think you're right that where you don't necessarily need to see it. Or it could have just been a throwaway line that he said later. But yeah, that was just the fact that they build up to this whole thing, and then they just don't do anything with that whole confrontation, especially because later they just fight, so.
Also, this is a good chunk of the way through the movie.
Oh yeah, it's an hour and 20 minutes.
An hour and 20 minutes.
And it's the first time they're meeting in costume.
People paid to see this movie, and they went in expecting Batman and Superman fighting each other, and they're sitting there for over an hour. Finally, almost an hour and a half in, we get to see them meet, and they just, threaten each other, and then they disappear. You gotta imagine from, like, a general moviegoer's perspective, this is a huge ripoff. Like, they paid for Fight Night, as Lex calls it later in the movie. And we're almost at the length of a full feature film, like a 90-minute feature, and they haven't even fought. They didn't even have a verbal fight.
So, next, a widely publicized congressional hearing being held at the U.S. Capitol led by Finch is held to question Superman's actions against Zod. A bomb smuggled in by Luthor detonates, killing everyone present except Superman. Superman blames himself for not detecting it in time and self-imposes exile. In response, Batman breaks into LexCorp and steals the kryptonite. He builds a powered exoskeleton, a kryptonite grenade launcher, and a kryptonite-tipped spear. Meanwhile, Luthor enters the Kryptonian ship and accesses its vast database of technology. Once again, this is a huge chunk of the movie condensed.
I think this might be the worst scene in the movie, if I gotta be honest. Like, I mean, the Martha scene at the end is also very bad, but this is kind of like the crux of what I was talking about earlier with the movie setting up interesting premises and not following through on them. Because we have the congressional hearing, and instead of having any exchange between Superman and these officials or the witnesses, any kind of like courtroom drama that would have been fun to watch, a guy just blows himself up and kills everybody. I don't know, it really undercuts what they were setting up, in my opinion.
It kind of harkens back to the last part where, Superman and Batman meet and they don't barely speak. This is also something that's been building up throughout the whole movie, and then it's just kind of like poofs out. Even like a 1-minute scene where he starts to talk. But no, they don't even let him say anything.
Yeah, it's not great. And this is another part where the Ultimate Edition adds a bunch of stuff, but I don't think it really fixes anything. Or if it does, puts a new problem in its place. Because in the Ultimate Edition, we get the revelation that Luthor was threatening Kahina, the witness from that African village from the beginning of the movie, into falsely testifying. And that seems like a pretty big thing to cut from the theatrical cut. But in the end, it doesn't make a difference at the hearing, because she confesses to Finch, and then Finch doesn't do anything. Like, she's been told by her star witness, or one of her witnesses, that she's been intimidated into testifying by Luthor, and instead of, like, calling the police at the Capitol or whatever, instead of doing something to stop Luthor, because now she knows something's off, that he's been rigging the committee, or he's been rigging the witnesses, and the whole thing is a sham, she still walks into the room and goes along with it. So this is something that the Ultimate Edition introduces and proceeds to ignore.
I wonder if it could be because, would it matter that, like, her character died? Because they can't actually call her up as witness? That's the only thing I can think of is why she would, like, not be able to bring that up in the courtroom, is that, like, her witness is dead. Sure, she did confess it to her, but they don't, like, she could be making it up. I think you do bring up a good point to where, like, it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to think if there's any way that they can justify it.
I just don't see it, because if anything, it would just be an issue of Finch's own safety. Mm-hmm. She knows that if she goes in there's a chance that Luthor could have some other shit planned, because she's crossed him, and she's just learned that, Luthor's not above killing people and intimidating people into saying whatever he wants. I just think there's no way around it. I think this is just a dumb choice. So honestly, the movie's better off for cutting it out, because if you're going to introduce it, you need to do something with it.
I feel like they almost kept it in the Ultimate Edition to introduce, like, some ideas, and then didn't realize that they could have cut the rest out. Because in the theatrical cut, they don't show them burning it, and then she's like, oh yeah, he came down from the sky and burned them all or whatever. Which, okay, yeah, then you have to explain that through that, but then by doing that, then keeping her in, you, like, cause all this other stuff that just dominoes.
Yeah, like, they could have made her somebody who Luthor's intimidated into testifying for, or you could have had her as someone who genuinely believed Superman did it, but they don't show us enough to go either way. It's just very confusing. Her character just feels completely wasted to me. And then she's unceremoniously killed by KG Beast, so.
Well, a big problem that I think the movie has is where it tries to do too much. Throughout having all this whole big plot, they have all these little subplots. They need to just condense it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, they've got the whole thing with the CIA and the Nairobi general. They have the stuff with Lex, they have the stuff with Batman, they've got all this stuff going on, and there's a whole chunk of the movie we haven't even talked about yet that's nearly an hour long, which introduces something else. It is a lot. So before the congressional hearing, Clark visits his mother, and she tells him that he doesn't owe the world a thing, and that he never did, which I think is very fucked up, but also very in line with how Ma Kent is portrayed in Man of Steel. And then during the congressional hearing, we see her working at a local restaurant now, so I guess the small town Sears closed.
R.I.P.
Do you think it's weird that Superman, like, decides to throw in the cape, so to speak, after the congressional bombing? Because it's not his fault, right?
Honestly, yeah. It just feels like he's just being a little emo. I think it's also, like, the way he's doing all his investigative journalism throughout, you'd think that he'd want to get to the bottom of it.
Yes, exactly. Even in the theatrical cut, you see him trying to get to the truth. So to see him go off and pout like this feels very un-Superman to me, even within the confines of his characterization here in the movie.
And you'd think he'd want to prove that he's good because everyone thinks he's, like, bad.
Unless he's really buying the bullshit that his mom said about him not owing the world anything, and how he talks about how this planet isn't his planet and it never was, which he says to Lois after this. There's no excuse. And if he does believe all that, it's not really a Superman I want to be watching. Something else I had about the congressional bombing, going off of what I just said. Superman in the Ultimate Cut does stick around to save people at the Capitol.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you saying that they didn't have that in the theatrical version, which is funny, because there already been so much said about him not saving people in the first movie.
Right. So this, and it would help clear his name, you would think, right? So he's shown to be saving these people. And in the Ultimate Cut, they still keep the scene after this where everyone on TV is saying that he's involved in some way in the bombing, which doesn't make any sense. You just added a whole scene where he's rescuing people from the wreckage of the Capitol explosion. So why would he be doing that if he was somehow involved, instead of the version of this in the theatrical where he just fucks off? That makes a lot more sense for why people would think he's involved somehow. Again, it's just an example of the Ultimate Edition adding something, but it's either contradicting or creating a new problem. So the bomber, who we didn't mention by name earlier, but his name's Wally Keith, same guy who Bruce saved at the beginning, same guy who vandalized the Superman statue. He's the guy who blew up. And we learn in the Ultimate Cut that he was not in on it. They have a whole extended sequence where Lois follows the police scanner or a news segment, and she goes to his place and investigates his house and finds fresh groceries, which to her proves that he couldn't have been in on it, which that's pretty flimsy to me. But it's another example like Finch learning about the witness intimidation, where the Ultimate Cut adds a bunch of stuff that doesn't make a difference because the results are the same. It's like with the bat branding, whether it's Lex behind it or just prisoners killing other prisoners. Wally Keith blows up. It doesn't matter if he's in on it or if it's from Lex. The result is the same. The Capitol still blows up, and Keith still hated Superman either way. Maybe he wouldn't have sacrificed his own life. I don't know.
I think you could almost imply that, though.
Yeah, like, he really hates Superman, and he's clearly depressed.
At no point is it ever like he spray painted on his monument or whatever. Like, okay, that doesn't mean he's gonna go in and just like nuke the Capitol.
Oh, I was going in a different way. I thought you were saying you can imply that he would blow himself up.
I mean, either or. I don't think it really needs to be stated.
And I think in the theatrical cut, you could kind of hint that Luthor and him schemed to do this off screen after he gives him the wheelchair.
Yeah.
It's just a detail that doesn't change the story. Like, the broad strokes are still the same, but we're forced to sit here and watch more movie.
It almost would have been better if they didn't show that, because everyone would have a different opinion on like, oh, like, did he or did he not know? I don't know. It might add something a little more interesting to it.
That's a great point. It could have been way more like ambiguous, and then as an audience member you could be arguing about like, well, was he in on it? Was he not in on it? Why would he have done it? But in the end, it doesn't make a difference.
So then also, after entering the Kryptonian ship and somehow breaking in and getting past all of the built-in safety features by somehow cutting off Zod's fingerprints, which kind of goes against what happened in the first movie. So Luthor gets into this Genesis chamber where he puts Zod's body, and then he cuts his hand, mixes the blood in, and then he makes, I don't know how deep we want to get into it, he makes some creature.
Yeah, I also thought it was really strange that Lex was able to just take full command of the Kryptonian ship earlier in the movie. Like, a fingerprint scanner? Really? That's it? This is the best security you could come up with as like a civilization that's 100,000 years old with light speed travel and stuff? But I do like the idea of Lex playing Frankenstein. I think that's pretty cool. And it's also funny because the body cast they made of Michael Shannon kind of looks like Frankenstein in this movie. Kind of looks like Frankenstein's monster.
It kind of does.
He's got a big square head and he's got the eyebrows and the bowl cut.
But I thought that the fake body looked pretty good.
Yeah, it did.
I've seen worse in higher production movies, so...
Definitely. Luthor lures Superman out of exile by kidnapping Martha and Lois, who he pushes off the LexCorp building. Superman saves Lois and confronts Luthor, who reveals that the distrust between Batman and Superman was manipulated. Luthor demands that he kill Batman in exchange for Martha's life. Superman tries to explain this to Batman, who instead attacks and eventually subdues him using a kryptonite gas. As Batman prepares to deal the final blow using the spear, Superman pleads with him to save Martha, the same name as Batman's mother. Batman hesitates in confusion, and Lois conveniently arrives and explains what Superman meant. Coming to his senses, Batman locates and rescues Martha.
Which, once again, covering a lot in a little.
That's a lot in a little. That's a good way of putting it. I thought the fight was okay.
I think this also cuts out one of my least favorite parts about the sequence. So he goes and confronts Lex on the building, and then between him going to the LexCorp roof and then him going to fight Batman, we have this scene where Diana pulls up the files that Bruce sent her, and it just completely breaks the tension because we know that they're going to fight, and then she's like, I got this email, let's check this out, see what's in it.
Yeah.
And then has to watch all the individual clips that Lex Luthor found, and then she's like, oh, he made logos for these heroes. And it broke it up so bad.
It is really silly. It's such poor pacing. It's also just such a clunky way of, in the last minute, introducing these characters who we're not even going to see in the movie.
Honestly, to me, it should have been like an after-credit scene or something, because it wouldn't have broken up the pacing. And then also, I feel like, I don't know if it was at this point or earlier in the movie, but they revealed that it was Diana Prince, who a lot of people will know that that's Wonder Woman, but I wish that they had kept her ambiguous. I mean, I know they did show her in the second trailer, which was horrible, and they also showed Doomsday there, so the surprise was already ruined. But if they hadn't done that and they had kept it ambiguous, I would have thought that it was almost Catwoman and not Wonder Woman.
I could see that. I mean, earlier on with the Gala stuff, she very much seemed like Catwoman. Like, the whole sequence there kind of reminded me of like a Bond film. Didn't give me Wonder Woman vibes at all until she was like talking about the sword with him, but even then, you could go in a different direction with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very, very clunky.
Well, yeah, because he's like, oh, you took something that belongs to me, and she's like, oh, a thief stealing from a thief, and that's like very Catwoman to me.
For sure. Something we forgot to mention because the plot summary completely omitted it. Before this, Superman goes up to the top of a mountain and talks to his ghost dad, not Bill Cosby, and not Russell Crowe, but ghost Kevin Costner this time. And to me, it just feels like complete gibberish. Maybe I was too stupid to understand it. The Ultimate Edition makes it even longer, but I don't think it makes it any better.
It does make it longer because, I think, I could be wrong, but they have him, and it's just Clark walking up a mountain. They're like, oh, you need a guide? And he's like, he's here to die. And I'm like, he's Superman. How's he gonna die in the mountains?
Yeah, that was a complete waste of time.
But then also, well, first of all, interesting trivia. This was Kevin Costner's first sequel in his career.
I did not know that.
Yeah, which is kind of insane because, I mean, he's pretty old in this.
Yeah.
I know now he's had like the 1923.
Oh yeah, all the Yellowstone stuff. He's got those Horizon movies.
Oh yeah, the Horizon, that's what it is. But yeah, this came first, so this was the first sequel in his career, which is pretty interesting. But also, I did read online, and this could just be someone looking too far into it or a complete coincidence with the events of the film. But apparently, there's this thing, it's called like third man syndrome or something, where people on a mountain, when they're like close to death, they see visions of like someone who helps them. And it happens a lot on mountains, which obviously is happening here. But Superman, again, is not close to death unless it's supposed to be foreshadowing that he's going to die in the movie. I thought that scene was really weird, and it wasn't really needed.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was very strange. I mean, I guess it was nice to see Kevin Costner again, because he did a good job in the last movie with what he was given, but completely unnecessary. We're already 2 hours into this thing, and as you pointed out earlier, we still got another hour to go.
Yeah.
So, the less time we spend here, the better. So, now we have the actual fight between these two. Batman versus Superman. The title of the movie, the reason why everybody came to the theater in the first place. And it lasts, 8 minutes, if we're being generous?
Maybe. I'd say max 10.
And I would say it's okay. It's not the most exciting thing. It's pretty underwhelming. But I mean, if it's Batman versus Superman, of course it's going to be one-sided.
I think one of my favorite aspects about it is, that they did kind of show Batman's planning to an extent, because the smoke grenades that he marks earlier, they have lead in it. So it's like a lead-based smoke bomb, so he can't actually see where he goes.
Good catch. I didn't notice that.
But I kind of liked that, and then, Superman isn't usually a fighter, so he can't really fight back, especially when he's weakened. It's honestly more of a beatdown from Batman on a weakened Superman once he shoots him with the kryptonite grenades or whatever. I didn't hate it. I think it probably could have been done better. I did like the bat armor. That was really cool.
Oh yeah, the Dark Knight Returns style armored bat suit and the bat signal were cool. I'm not trying to be a super big hater. Like, I thought it was fine. I just think, like, if I was going in to see this movie for the first time, I would be expecting way more, and I would expect way better, like, choreography and stuff.
Like a 15-minute fight or something.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very short fight. It's very one-sided. At first, Superman is just destroying all of his toys because it's a regular guy versus a god, basically. And then in the second half, it turns into a beatdown the other way, where Superman is just getting tossed around like a rag doll, getting his face smashed in with a kitchen sink. Which I did like that part.
That was brutal.
That was very brutal.
It made me wonder how much he feels.
Yeah, I did wonder, like...
Because, like, that would kill someone. I mean, obviously he's weakened, but to what extent?
That would have definitely killed a normal man.
I will say, this was one of the scenes where it had the IMAX ratio, which was in 4:3. And it's a little jarring going back and forth between them, because... something about like it being taller and then being slimmer. For some reason while I was watching it, it related to my brain like gameplay to cutscene almost.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That aspect ratio change does do something to your brain for sure.
Yeah, it's weird.
Also, at the beginning of the fight, we get another classic Superman line. If I wanted it, you'd be dead already. Classic Superman.
I guess we have to talk about it now. The Martha scene.
Yes.
Your favorite scene in the film.
Yes, the Martha scene. Probably the most convenient bit of writing I've ever watched unfold on the big screen. I don't know. What else is there to say about it? It's incredibly contrived. It's lazy. It's just really bad. Everyone's already shit on it for the past 10 years, so I'm not sure what else I can say that hasn't already been said.
So watching it again, the way that Clark was saying Martha kind of to me was like the way that Thomas Wayne was saying Martha at the beginning when he's like laying, he goes, Martha. And then I think that was, to me, it kind of registered that Batman was seeing him as like almost killing his father or something.
Yeah, I could see that. He's got a lot of problems. I mean, don't they explicitly show a flashback from the montage at the beginning?
They do, yeah. And that was also a big thing because I felt like they could have just used like that one clip or something, but they go like through the whole flashback again, like both of them getting killed. I thought that a better way to do it would have been if he was calling out for like his mother instead of Martha.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Or, Lois comes in to save the day. Maybe Batman sees her get in between him and Superman and is reminded of his dad stepping in between the mugger and his mom. Something to remind him that, hey, this is a human being, or maybe not a human being, but he's a person with people who love him and stuff, and you're about to murder him in cold blood.
I think I see what they were going for. I just don't think that the execution was there.
Yeah.
There needed to be some other level to it, which is kind of funny because the whole movie is so complex, and then this is like a very crucial scene to not fuck up, and they kind of fuck it up and make it not as complex.
I agree. They had to find some way to make sure these two, resolve their differences by the end of the movie. And in theory, I don't hate this either, but I do think you're right. The execution is way too brief and way too simple and just not satisfying as an audience member.
I also thought it was kind of weird how fast that they were like buddy because he's sitting there like ready to kill him, and he's like, oh, my bad, bro. He's like, he's got my mom. He's like, oh, I'll go get her, and then he just kind of leaves, and then like they're friends, they're like best friends now. And it's so funny to me.
Yeah, they make a quip later when Wonder Woman shows up. Is she with you? I thought she was with you. That's not the kind of thing you joke around about when this guy was ready to kill you 30 minutes ago.
One more thing about the Superman fight was, at the end, Alfred makes a comment, and the only thing I could think of was that Alfred was just watching Batman try and kill Superman, like Obama watching the SEAL Team 6 raiding on Osama bin Laden. He's just watching the whole time like, he's gonna kill him. He's like, I'm glad you didn't do it, bro. Let's go save Martha. Although it does bring up one of the best scenes in the movie, the warehouse scene.
Yes, the warehouse scene is great. No notes. It is perfect. Well, I mean, I guess he murders somebody with with an explosive, like fuel canister, but it is so good.
It's probably my favorite Batman scene in live action.
Yeah, it is really good. It really makes you wish that solo Batman movie had come true with Batfleck. And you know, Zack Snyder, I mean, look, I don't think he's a terrible director all around. I know we've been shitting on him a lot in the last episode and this one, but I do think he's made some good movies, and some good comic book movies too. Like, I like the Watchmen movie. I don't think it's perfect, but I like it, and I like 300, and I like this movie. I think that Zack Snyder would have made a good Batman solo film. Now, obviously, that's never going to happen now, but it seems like something he could have been very well equipped to do.
No, I agree. I think, a lot of the problems with this movie and Man of Steel boil down to the writing, and then also kind of the fact that Zack Snyder gets his way. I think that, like, besides that, the movies are very well made, especially visually, and like the choreography and the CGI all are outstanding. I think he's very good about shooting around CGI too, because he's been doing it a lot, like Sucker Punch. That's all like CGI. I brought it up to you before that I think that he'd actually be a really good candidate to make like a DCU movie, because I think that if someone's overseeing how he's doing and he doesn't have, I guess this is maybe a bad thing for a director to not have, but like full control, I think that he'd probably would make like a pretty good, decent movie, like maybe The Authority.
Yeah, that would be great.
It seems like it would be right up his alley.
The Authority would be great. I mean, if they're going for a campier take on Batman with the DCU, he wouldn't be a good fit. But for sure, there are projects in the DCU that he could do, and he would be a great fit for them.
It would be so funny too to have the Snyder Cut crowd have to like realize that he's making a DCU movie, and then they'd be like, "Oh my god!"
They're never gonna learn.
The crash out would be chef's kiss. It would be hilarious.
They're never gonna learn. I mean, the fact that him and Gunn have been friends for like 20 years, they literally made a movie together. There's no bad blood between them. That doesn't register for the Snyderverse cultists. So, you know, it doesn't matter. I don't even think Zack Snyder likes these people. I think he definitely doesn't like these people. I guess we're getting off track. But the point is, the warehouse scene is excellent and a perfect showcase of what Zack Snyder can do well.
I think my favorite thing about it too is that, at least for me, it felt like this is a very capable Batman who, like, he knows how to fight. He has all these gadgets that he's using to his advantage. And it's just like the perfect mix of like veteran fighter, and then also like he is still a little brutal. Maybe less so, but like there's one, he like rock bottoms a guy where he punches him, he like slams his neck on the ground. I'm like, holy shit. It's just like, I mean, he does kill again. But besides the killing, they're probably fine, right? There's the guy who gets like slammed up against a wall with a crate and there's blood streaking down the wall. He's probably fine.
There is the guy who he knocks over that like lands next to an active grenade and the grenade explodes.
Well, that's he should have pulled out the grenade. What can I say?
I mean, fair. I guess that's more of an indirect, you know, like he didn't save him, but he didn't kill him.
It was a flashbang.
Sure, let's go with that.
And there is also where he has the gun and he shoots the gas tank on KG Beast's back.
Yeah, and just straight up burners him.
Now. In the comics, he does have like a 90% burned body. So this could be his origin story. We'll never know because we never see him again. But it's never confirmed that he's dead.
Something tells me he wasn't going to show up in Justice League, in Zack Snyder's plans for this.
He's Darkseid's right-hand man.
Man.
My right-hand man, KG Beast. So now that they've stopped fighting, Luthor executes his backup plan once Superman confronts him and finds out that Batman has rescued Martha. So he unleashes the genetically engineered monster that he made earlier from Zod's body and his own blood. Once they start fighting, Diana joins Batman and Superman in their fight, and the trio fight the creature. Batman realizes its vulnerability, kryptonite, and Superman fatally impales the creature with the kryptonite spear. Superman, already weakened by kryptonite exposure, is fatally wounded by the creature before it dies.
I hated all of this. I think that by this point in the movie, even in the theatrical cut, I was pretty exhausted because it's already a very long movie. And to me, it feels like the climax of the movie, like the title would suggest, is Batman versus Superman. And we got that. And to me, the end of the movie should have been them reconciling and arresting Luthor. Like, Batman rescues Martha, Superman apprehends Luthor, they reunite, job's done, well done, world's finest, boom, okay? Luthor has already been busy with all his scheming throughout the movie, so we don't really need him to be doing the stuff with Zod's body. And as a result, we get Doomsday, this version of Doomsday, and it feels like the movie has 2 third acts, because we have the whole third act where the two fight, and then we have another third act, another climax where it's them and Wonder Woman fighting Doomsday. And at this point in the movie, there's like another 35 minutes left, and I was just exhausted. I think that it looked good visually, but I was just worn out.
I had a lot of thoughts about this rewatching it this time. Immediately, my first note was, no, we have the snap zooms back for the Doomsday fight.
Yeah.
Because I know we both also forgot to mention that, like the music from Man of Steel, but we both did not like the snap zooms throughout the film.
It is very distracting. It looks very fake. They did it a lot in Man of Steel, which thankfully they cut back on it here. But yeah, they're back.
Will you explain what it is?
Right, so snap zoom, it's kind of like something you would see in The Office or something, where it's like the camera will just very quickly zoom in tighter on a subject. And you see it a lot in Man of Steel, but the difference is it's not a documentary. It's not really happening. It's a bunch of CG on a battlefield. So when you're doing a snap zoom like that, I'm imagining like, wait, there's a documentary crew here? There's a cameraman zooming in? It looks very fake. It looks like it's not being handled by a human being, but also it's the kind of zoom that a human being on like a documentary would be doing. So it's I don't know, it's a weird technique. I guess the idea is to make it feel more grounded or like real, but we're talking about a giant slug monster that looks like the Harry Potter bathroom troll covered in baby oil. You know, there's nothing about this that's real.
It almost gives like found footage vibes, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like a Cloverfield or something.
But like not in a good way.
Yeah.
I could understand if they had been doing it throughout the film, like they were in Man of Steel, but in this one, they didn't do it until this. And then I'm just like, I hate it. It bothers me.
It's a very jarring decision.
So when they start fighting, fun cameo, Patrick Wilson is the president's voice on the phone when they initially collide and start fighting. But then, why do they go to nukes so fast? Superman and Doomsday start fighting and they go up into the atmosphere and he's like, fuck it, nuke him. And I'm like, they just started fighting. Like, he fought Zod, he defeated Zod. Why don't they trust him to finish this?
It's a good point. Maybe they thought that the fight with Zod created too much collateral damage, but I mean, we're talking about nukes. I don't know if a nuke, even if in orbit, would create less collateral damage. You're right, it is a very extreme option to take right away, but I did not know that. Patrick Wilson is the voice of the president. He did sound familiar when they played his voice through the speakerphone, but I couldn't place it. That's pretty cool. I mean, not only because he shows up later as Ocean Master, but also he was in Zack Snyder's Watchmen as Night Owl.
Which is probably why he called him in, just as a fun little cameo kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he was cast as Ocean Master yet. I also thought it was really funny during this fight because, as I said earlier, in the interviews they were talking about the city being destroyed in Man of Steel, and that was all on the internet for years. People were complaining about it. So after having all this, and then they crash back down from orbit onto what they say is an abandoned island, and then Batman's like, oh, the spear's in the city. We gotta go back to the city. And I'm like, what are you doing? You had a free ticket right there to finally be like, oh, we're fighting on an abandoned island. And then they just throw all the criticism out the window and they say, okay, we're going back to the city.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I didn't even think about that. They had the perfect excuse to avoid the same criticisms and they just walked right into it again.
I think they do try and say that like the port's deserted or something, but even then,
yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense. Or the train station.
Yeah, the old train station in downtown Detroit, or I guess like Corktown, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy also, you know, just off on a tangent, to see how that place is really turned around. When they shot this movie there 10 years ago, it was a shithole.
Yeah.
And now Like a bunch of companies, including Ford, have dumped like tens of millions of dollars into refurnishing it and stuff.
Looks completely different.
Oh yeah.
I also hated the whole spear plot line because earlier and after they are done fighting, Lois throws the spear down this like hole with water in it or something. And then they have her go back and she's like, oh, I need the spear. And it's just like, it eats up screen time, and then it just makes her seem like a damsel in distress because in the fight some debris falls on it and she can't get out. And then also, Batman can't fight Doomsday. Why would we not have him go get the spear while the other two distract him?
Yeah.
It just, I hated it.
No, I agree, that's very stupid, and you would think he'd have a tracking device in the spear or something.
I don't know why she threw it in the hole in the first, like I know she's trying to get rid of it, but he fucking left, like you don't need to go throw it away.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It makes no sense. There's no reason for her to have tossed it like that, and Superman and Wonder Woman are metahumans. They can take some abuse. If anyone's got to stall Doomsday for a bit, it's them, not the regular guy. The regular guy can get in his fancy ship, fly over, get the spear, and come back. Yeah, 100%.
Especially because his fighting it is just like dodging around with his little grappling hook.
Yeah, but the fight ends, like we discussed, and at the end of it, Superman dies.
Yeah, F.
Yeah, F in the chat. That's huge. I mean, this is a crazy decision. We're in the second entry in DC's new cinematic universe, and Snyder has made the decision to kill Superman in the second movie. Could you imagine that with Marvel? If they had killed, like, Captain America or Iron Man in the second appearance that they have? It just boggles my mind because, you know, there have been plenty of bad decisions before this point in the movie that would limit future storytelling. But the idea that you would adapt the death of Superman for the second entry in your franchise, it just seems like it's really way too early for that.
Especially because in the comics, the death of Superman was a really, really, really big event in the 90s. And like one of the things that pops up a lot is, you know, Superman's like super powerful, and then you suddenly have the world without him. And then people are trying to step in to kind of fill the void that he leaves behind. But obviously, since this is the second movie, we don't get any of that. And so arguably one of the most interesting parts of it is just thrown out the window. And it also makes me wonder, like, if they're gonna do the death of Superman again, does it like kind of lose some of its steam because it's already happened before?
Yeah.
Even if it's in a different universe, like just throw away one of his biggest stories on his second appearance is insane.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do this story again, which didn't you tell me earlier that this isn't considered the real Doomsday by Zack Snyder?
Yeah, I was just about to say that after. He confirmed that this wasn't the Doomsday. I don't know the full quote, but he's like, yeah, so there's still like the real Doomsday out there. Like, this isn't the original one. I don't know why he felt like he had to need to say that, because I don't think that he even had plans for Doomsday to show up in the rest of his movies. You could have just let it be.
Yeah.
Admitted that you wasted one of his most iconic villains, but then he just had to go and kind of be like, yeah, that's not the real Doomsday.
Yeah, I just looked it up. He replied to some guy on Vero and confirmed the real Doomsday is out there still. And you're right. According to his own plans, this is like 5 movies. Are they really going to bring back Doomsday twice with 3 projects left to go? I don't think so.
I'll have to double check like later when we go into that. Like I think we're going to do a whole episode on the unmade Justice League movies. But from what I remember, I don't remember Doomsday being in them at all.
Really baffling decision to try and establish after the fact that this is a fake Doomsday.
On a social media platform.
That nobody has.
I think what's really funny too is that I have another quote from Snyder here where when he was talking about his thoughts on Jimmy Olsen in the universe, and I think it kind of ties into this because he's talking about how he unceremoniously killed him off, and he's like, people always ask me if Jimmy's dead. Do we see him again? Does he come back to life? I don't think so. It implies a bigger universe. It implies that these dominoes are falling as we go forward. It was a 5-movie arc, and as the dominoes fall, as you go, you've ended up with the consequences, so the world is rebuilt again each time the movies continue. If this was a TV show, I would say for sure we'd bring Jimmy back. Hopefully as the characters die off, they give us something. They teach us something as they go. And that's kind of what their role is in the mythology that is sort of the superhero pantheon. I'm sure you could make a Jimmy Olsen TV show if you felt like it, or a Jimmy Olsen movie, a one-off origin film of Jimmy Olsen, but for me, that was the purpose he served, and that's fine.
Now let me ask you something. Do you think that Jimmy Olsen in this movie dying gave us something and taught us something?
Yes. I think it taught us that he wasn't in the universe anymore.
It taught us that he's dead. It taught us to expect no more Jimmy Olsen.
Well, he says it implies a bigger universe. This fake Doomsday, and it being not the real Doomsday, that implies a bigger universe.
Right. It implies a bigger universe when you kill off characters. Yeah.
And when this fake Doomsday died off, he gave us something, and it was the death of Superman. And that taught us that Superman can die.
It taught us that we can kill off our lead in the cinematic universe on their second movie. Also, this quote about Jimmy Olsen boggles my mind because, again, it just contradicts everything that you would think Warner Brothers would want to do. Like, if they're trying to copy Marvel and they're trying to do as many projects as possible and, maybe even expand into TV shows like Marvel eventually would, you would expect, like, Jimmy Olsen to stick around for future Superman movies and stuff, But again, it's an example of a character, like Robin, killed off unceremoniously.
He didn't give us something. He didn't teach us anything.
No.
He just taught us that maybe the Joker exists.
Yeah, I don't know, Especially
the fact that he's relating to Jimmy Olsen, who was in his movie for like a second, and could be literally hand-waved away where someone's like, oh yeah, he was using his cover for the CIA or something. But to go on this like whole tangent about the superhero pantheon, talking about Jimmy Olsen, is just funny to me.
At that point, why bother putting him in the movie at all?
Exactly.
Which is exactly what the theatrical cut does. It just removes all mention of him. Another nitpick about the fight. I mean, you mentioned why didn't Batman go get the spear? Why didn't Wonder Woman spear him when they have it? Why have Superman be the one to stab him through with the spear? If Wonder Woman did it and Superman was just like helping to hold Doomsday down, he'd be a lot further away from the kryptonite and maybe he wouldn't have died.
Yeah, that one felt a little ham-fisted to me too, because I think what they try to imply through the fight is that Wonder Woman has Doomsday like in the lasso and is holding him so he can't like fight back or whatever. But Wonder Woman's like a trained warrior, and you'd think that she'd be able to like fight it, even if it's stronger than her. She should probably be able to like dodge around and fight it better than Superman would. Like, why did he have to be the one to do it?
Exactly. It just seems very contrived. Like, they needed to figure out a way to make Superman dead at the end of this, because that's how the book goes. That he fights Doomsday and he dies.
Especially because she didn't really do anything. She did help fight, but like throughout the rest of the movie, if you took her out, the only thing that would change was that there's no setup for Justice League.
100%.
So at least this way she could have done something.
Yeah, if she were the one to kill Doomsday, it would have justified her role in the movie, aside from just setting up future projects.
Plus then you can show the real Doomsday.
Yeah, you can show the real Doomsday that Superman will kill. Yeah, I mean, Zack Snyder might even have the same quote. People are pissed off that Wonder Woman gets to kill Doomsday, and he'll go, oh, well, it's actually not the real Doomsday.
It's not the real Wonder Woman.
Yeah, it's not the real Wonder Woman. No. You might say it's a bit of a nitpick, but it's worth asking. When one of the three characters has like a lethal allergy to this green rock, why would you have that character be the one to handle it when someone else on the team could?
Why could he not just like shit chuck it into his chest from afar?
Also a good point. He could have thrown it. Spears can be thrown.
He could have just javelined it. So also we have a scene where Luthor is arrested by the military after Superman is killed on the mothership.
Oh, you're talking about the scene from the Ultimate Edition.
Yeah. So this wasn't in the theatrical cut, but it is canon, and they released it the weekend that the movie came out, and then they added it into the Ultimate Edition. Is Luthor's arrested on the ship communing with Steppenwolf somehow. They don't explain, but
yeah, he's having like a Kryptonian FaceTime call with Steppenwolf. I don't know how he got his number or why they're talking with each other. I guess maybe there could be something with the Kryptonian files on the ship, but those would be like 100,000 years old. I don't know, whatever. It doesn't really make much sense. I guess it makes more sense than the theatrical cut where this is missing and he still gives a speech about a bell being rung and how they're coming for us, but it is very weird.
Yeah, it's funny it's not in the theatrical cut too, considering like, as we know, this is like the 5-arc movie or whatever, and it would directly set up Justice League. It's just weird to cut it out.
Yeah.
Especially because they already released it the opening weekend on YouTube.
They released it on YouTube. That was going to be my next question. So after the movie came out, they released this as like an epilogue, like a little bonus scene, but it's canon. It feels like they might have just regretted not putting it in the theatrical cut then.
Probably, yeah. It's like, what, a minute long max? You could have left it in.
Yeah, not a very long scene. It sets up Justice League well. Definitely explains his monologue to Batman at the end. versus the theatrical cut where it just sounds like complete nonsense. Following Luthor's arrest, Batman confronts him in prison, warning him that he'll always be watching. Luthor gloats that Superman's death has made the world vulnerable to powerful alien threats. A memorial is held for Superman in Metropolis, while Bruce and Diana attend a funeral for Clark, who was also declared dead. Martha gives Lois an envelope containing an engagement ring from Clark. Bruce tells Diana that he regrets failing Superman and asks for her help in forming a team of metahumans to protect Earth in Superman's absence. As they leave, the dirt atop Clark's coffin levitates.
I actually did like the, pretty much this whole chunk of film. I thought that the funeral scenes were really pretty, maybe a bit long and a bit too much slow-mo. Like, they have the gun firing in slow-mo and then the shell comes out. It's like 30 seconds till it falls on the ground. But I thought it was, like, beautiful and somber.
I also really like the funeral scenes. I like the scene before that in prison with Lex.
Oh, that's a great scene, yeah.
I'm with you. I think this whole ending chunk of the movie is, it's pretty nice. I think the speech from Batman about needing to put together a team is really weak, because we already know that the Nightmare stuff is bullshit, because Superman's dead now, he wasn't evil, Batman trusts him and regrets his decisions, so at this point, as an audience member, I'm wondering what the hell future Flash was babbling about.
My biggest complaint with this section is at the end, because this is supposed to be like Batman is a changed man now. But I don't see how he's actually changed just by like Superman's death, because he's like, I have to be better. But like, Superman didn't inspire him. The only thing I can think of that would inspire him is Superman's sacrifice, which I guess is what they're going for, and the fact that like an alien sacrificed himself for Earth, so he's like not a bad guy or whatever. But that part didn't work for me.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier when the Martha scene happened, but it feels like there should be something stronger there to make him change his mind.
I did really like that prison scene though with Luthor and Batman. That was really cool, and that silhouette that pops up when the lights are like flickering in and out is just terrifying, because it's just big and bulky Batman. I don't know how Luthor didn't like shit his pants, considering I don't think he's ever met him face to face before. And he punched concrete and made the Bat logo.
That was pretty metal. It was pretty fucking sweet. And I do like the coffin levitating the dirt at the end. Like, visually, I think that's cool, but it also makes no sense.
You know what else didn't make sense?
Sure.
Why did he have the ring and like sent in an envelope to the farm?
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense now that you say it.
So at the funeral, what was cool was there was some cameos from Man of Steel. First of all, Pete Ross from IHOP cameo. And then actually, the priest that gives the eulogy is the same priest that he goes to see in Man of Steel when he's thinking about turning himself in, which I thought was a kind of cool. It's not directly addressed, but if you look it up on IMDb, it's the same actor.
Good catch. I did not pick up on that. So, Thomas, did you like the movie? Did you think it worked?
I do enjoy the movie. I think that it is maybe a bit hard to watch, especially if you watch the Ultimate Edition, which I think is better than the theatrical cut. But devoting 3 hours to watch it is time consuming. I do think it's an enjoyable film, and I think it's almost more enjoyable to me than Man of Steel on the rewatch, because I think that there's a bit more substance to it, even if it's more complex than it should be. Besides like Batman killing, Superman dying, and just the length, I think it's a pretty solid movie.
I think I liked it as well. I don't think it's great. I think it's way too long. And, I can't imagine being somebody walking out of this movie wishing that it was like 40 minutes longer. If anything, it needs to be 40 minutes shorter. Now, if there was an Ultimate Edition that made the movie 40 minutes shorter, that would be my jam. But I do think it's a huge step up from Man of Steel, and it's not a complete waste. Like, there is a lot of stuff to like in here. Although I do think it chickens out from answering the questions it sets up. I know
earlier I did say that Wonder Woman didn't do much in the movie, but I did enjoy her presence. And I think it was cool to see all three of them on the screen at the same time. But introducing them through like that email, well, first of all, broke up the flow of the movie, but also didn't really feel needed. I almost would have liked to see it as a post-credits scene, especially because at the end, Batman's literally like, we need to form a team, and he could have given her the flash drive. And then like that could have been her watching over it, like over the credit scenes or something. And I think that maybe would have been better. I thought it was weird that Lex Luthor made their like little logos, and I'm not exactly sure why he even had all that.
That's so true. Why did he make logos for them? He hired a graphic designer.
Went on Fiverr, he's like, yeah, so I got this guy who runs really fast. It would be a cool logo for him. It doesn't really work as the kickoff for the DCEU, and I don't think it really worked in setting up the Justice League, especially because before Justice League ends up coming out, only Wonder Woman comes out, and then all the Justice League is set up in Justice League and not through their own movies, unlike the Avengers, and it's just, maybe it would work if it was actually a 5-movie arc, but the way that the DCU expands to include other films, including films based on the Justice League members that aren't made before the actual Justice League movie, it just muddles the water, and I think it was a mistake to have them in this.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we say, because there's something else that talks that's much louder, and that is money. So Thomas,
Cha-ching!
Do you want to go over the box office aftermath of release?
Oh yes. So aftermath of release, we have the box office. So, Batman v Superman's reported budget is anywhere from $250 million to $325 million, which, compared to Man of Steel, was $225 to $258. I hope it's more near 250, because 325 million sounds like an insane number, and I don't even know if that's pre or post marketing.
That is one of the biggest budgets I've ever heard of.
I think it actually is.
And that's like 10 years ago, so it would have been worth more than 325 million today.
I wonder how much, like, even any of the Avengers movies are compared to 300. I mean, they're probably closer to like 500.
I can look it up. Taking a quick look here, the estimated budget for the Avengers was somewhere between 220 and 225 million. So even on the low end, this movie cost more than the Avengers.
That's crazy. And the Avengers was like the team-up movie. This isn't even the team-up movie. This is like the pre-team-up movie. Can you look up how much Endgame cost too? I just want to know.
I will. Justice League is 300 million. Endgame...
There's no way that this cost 325.
Okay, Endgame cost somewhere between 356 and 400.
There's no way it's 320. I hope it's not 325. I just don't see where the money would go.
Yeah, I think it's a good looking movie, but that's an insane budget.
So, past the budget. The domestic opening weekend was $166 million. And good news, it was the 8th biggest opening weekend of all time, and it still holds the largest Easter opening weekend of all time. However, there was a little bad news that came along with the release, and that was it set a new record for worst Friday to Sunday drop for a superhero movie with a 58% decline. And it also had a historic second weekend drop with no competition. Friday to Friday drop of 81%, and the second weekend dropped to 68.4%.
So after a couple weeks, nobody was seeing this.
I will say, I think the second weekend drop kind of is like so low because that first Easter weekend, people would have Friday off. So people could go on Friday as opposed to like the next week where they wouldn't have Friday off. But I mean, still, it's got to be pretty high despite that.
That is pretty severe though. Like that's a 68.4% drop off from the number after the 81% drop off. If I'm understanding this correctly. It's a fraction of a fraction. Meanwhile, Marvel Civil War, just a month and a half later, similar premise, their two big characters fighting each other, made over $1 billion in its first 2 weeks.
And for the final totals, to tie into that, $330 million in domestic, so it made half of its money in like the first weekend, which is insane. International was $544 million, total $874.4 million, and then net profit $105.7 million. And I'm honestly kind of shocked it made a profit.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was a pretty drastic drop-off. And also, you gotta wonder, is this worth it? Like, was this movie worth it? Because if it only made, and I say only, I know it's a lot of money, $105 million is a lot of money, but this is the only film they made in 3 years. Between Man of Steel in 2013 and this, there was nothing else. So they presumably spent 3 years working on this movie only to make $105 million?
What is kind of funny to me is that the total isn't horrible. A lot of movies would love to make $874 million, but when they compare it to these Marvel movies which are making $1 billion, they're like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah, I mean, $874 million is an insanely high number, but with a budget this high, and with these expectations to be cracking $1 billion with every single movie, yeah, I mean, they're going to look at it as a failure.
When they set the goalpost that high, it's almost impossible to not see it as a failure. So for reception and critical response, it has a 28% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes with a 63% audience score, a 44 Metacritic score, and a B Cinema score. Which honestly, I think 28 sounds a little low to me. I feel like 63 is a bit more accurate.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the movie's great, but I do think it's not a 28%.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Rotten Tomatoes scoring in general, but I think 28 just makes it sound to me like it's one of the worst movies ever made.
I mean, yeah, even the 44 on Metacritic seems a little low. I'd probably give this like a 60.
Kevin Smith said the film showed a fundamental misunderstanding of both superheroes. He offered praise for Ben Affleck, saying he thought he was the best version of Batman as a fighter, but he didn't recognize his character as the usual Batman from the comics. He closed saying that Snyder has a beautiful visual style, but you need more than just pictures, you need characterization. I feel like Kevin Smith goes pretty easy on stuff too, because, he's just a big nerd, so he likes to see everything. So him going a little hard, I feel like he doesn't do that very often. I feel like he's very easy to please.
Especially if it's a movie that's got his buddy in it.
Yeah.
Couldn't find any thoughts from the guy who did Death of Superman, but I did find a quote here from Frank Miller, who wrote The Dark Knight Returns. As for his thoughts, he says, "I'll just say thanks. What can I say? No, actually, I'll withdraw that. I'll say you're welcome." What an asshole.
Classic Frank Miller.
But it's pretty funny.
We were both looking for more quotes from comic authors, but we didn't find that many compared to Man of Steel, which I was thinking that with how divisive this one was compared to Man of Steel, there'd be more, but I guess not. And as a result of this movie, we had some studio turmoil. After this film bombed at the box office, Warner Brothers established DC Films. They sought to stabilize the direction of this universe that they were cobbling together, and appointed Executive President John Berg and CCO of DC Comics, Jeff Johns, to run the division. This was obviously done to try and compete more directly with Marvel. This was part of a broader move to change the Warner Brothers production pipeline, where executives were put in charge of specific genre streams instead of having a broad range of movies to oversee. So this wasn't necessarily in response to exclusively this, but kind of just an overall change in how Warner Brothers was doing things.
It is kind of crazy to imagine that up to this point, they did not have a dedicated management team for DC Productions. Like, this was all going straight up to the top of Warner Brothers instead of kind of having its own group.
Especially after they announced all the stuff. Because you'd think that, once they'd announced, or, if they had plans, then they'd have, a team ready to go on it.
Yeah, and that happened a year after Man of Steel. So they went through all of this movie after announcing the slate, still not having, a dedicated group to manage the property. And you look at Marvel, and Marvel Studios has existed in one form or another since the 90s.
They were just very behind on the times.
So while the premise of seeing these two icons duke it out on the big screen was enough to put asses in seats, the film's quality had most of those asses dissatisfied when they got up. With such a drastic reception to the movie overall, it was possible that Warner Brothers had just burned through all of the goodwill and interest audiences would have had for the franchise at large. Driven by this worry, Warner Brothers made the decision to perform extensive reshoots and a new edit for their already shot next entry in the franchise, Suicide Squad, turning what was once described by the film's director as a dark, soulful film into something unrecognizable.
Thanks for listening. If you liked the show or if you hated the show, please let us know in the comments and share it with your friends. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye. Goddamn chair.
Fucking chair. Next episode, you're gonna have to record from the floor. I will join you. We'll be on our floors looking up.